Hey guys, welcome back to the Kristen Hagopian Show. And with the next guest that I have on here, I'm just delighted because I'm doing it again, guys. We've got the holidays coming up, and I'm so delighted about it. And I'm going into my freak-out phase with very little warning. I mean, you're thinking about guests coming, you're thinking about stuff you want to get done. It's all in the spirit of the season, but I'm just getting a little frazzled. So imagine my delight at having Dr. Gail Gross. You've seen her on the Huffington Post. You've seen her everywhere. She's all over the place with television segments and on Fox and everything else we've seen her. And she is taking time out of her very busy schedule, not only to talk me out of my tree, but maybe to add some insight as to how we can make this a little more of a calm, cool, steady, fun holiday for us. Dr. Gross, thank you so much for hanging out. How are you today?
I'm great, Kristen. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is mine. You are a very busy lady. You've got a new book out. You are constantly doing the segments that I love, reading on Huffington Post. You're on television all the time. First of all, tell us about the new book.
The new book is called How to Build Your Baby's Brain. And it's about neuroscience, basically, that we're the only species that's born undeveloped, and our brain at first is only a quarter of the size it will be in maturity, and we are really still developing outside of the womb. So we need to think about what we do to that developing brain, and if we understand what the stages of development are, we can positively affect them so that your child can reach his or her fullest potential and not have certain problems that can be from the environment. Half is nurture, but the other half really is nature.
That's fascinating. And that quarter of a brain statement, that makes a lot of sense with regards to some guys that I dated in high school. That's what immediately first jumped to mind.
I know what you're saying.
As now the mom of two young kids, I've got a 10-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son, and it's fascinating to get the feel, from a parental standpoint, as to how we can help these beautiful people just grow and nurture them into the fine adults that they are. Tell us a bit about what with regards to your studies, with regards to what you find to be the best tactics and techniques for bringing these beautiful kids to adults. What are your thoughts with regards to, nowadays we have 50 different things kind of leaning our way. We should do this, we should do that. Should we go old school when it comes to raising our kids, or are there some new insights that we should really be using to help them grow even more?
Well, it's an excellent question, Kristen. At the end of the day, children really want to be with their parents, and bonding is the key to happy parenting. And happy children. And our children are being hurried through childhood. Not only are they being hurried through childhood, but they often don't have the coping skills to develop with that famous word, stress, that they experience not only in school but with other children, siblings, and parents that have to work. I was a working parent, so I know that we have to do that in our culture in the West. Other countries bring their children along with them. And I think if we reach a place in our culture where we ultimately have companies that have nurseries attached to them so that parents can pop in and see their children during the day and lower their stress and anxiety from separation, we'll have a lot healthier children. But to start with, the big problem for development is stress. It raises cortisol. Cortisol bathes the brain, the part of the brain that gives us critical thinking, executive functioning, our abstract thinking, and our impulse control. And it can actually change the architecture of that brain if it's consistent, like the stress of poverty, the stress of bullying, the stress of divorce, the stress of mom and dad having to work all the time and then not compensating for that time away on the weekends or in the evenings. So there in the early years, bonding is so important because children see mom and dad as appendages. They don't see you as separate. That's really why children are so possessive. That's why sibling rivalry is such a big deal. And that's why divorce is so traumatic for kids, because they feel that you're an appendage of them. That's my mom. That's my dad. And central to their existence is really mom. I mean, they come from mom's body. They know her smell, the sound of her voice, the meter of her heart, the rhythm of her heart. And so mom is their whole world. And in cultures, for example, in China or Africa, where mom goes to work and has baby slung around her or on her back, baby is attached and going with mom everywhere and feels secure and comforted and is learning and is being culturized and socialized. But in our culture, we have to separate. So by separating, we have to compensate. The most important thing then is being with our children. You don't even have to do a whole lot of things. You don't have to play exotic games or provocative experiences with flashcards. We just have to be there. And we went through this whole stage in the 80s and 90s where we said it was quality time, not quantity time. But really, it's quantity time. The more time you spend with your children, the better off they are. They really just want to be with you, and they need to be with you in the early years. And then the other thing is not giving them ways to reduce pressure. Studying is a very good thing with children at your ages. You know, those little ones going to school don't really have the patience or the capacity to sit for such long hours, come home, and then sit again and do homework. So just a simple cue, if when they come home to do homework, you let them get up every 15 minutes, walk around, have a cookie or a protein drink or a glass of milk, and then sit down again. They'll do much better completing their task rather than sitting there and trying to sustain their patience for an hour or even 2 hours. So we have to take into consideration our children's biology and psychology, and if we do understand what that brain is doing, we can help that brain reach its fullest potential. And in fact, far better than we can imagine. We don't realize that half of the story is our genes, and that is truly half the story. But we don't have enough genes to select which genes are turned on and which genes are turned off. And what makes that selection is the environment we create for our children. That's where the nurture part comes in. And believe it or not, that's half the story. So you can have a shy child and recognize that at the beginning and help that child become much more socially adept. And we can see those changes on MRIs and CAT scans and PET scans. Now technology allows us to see what mom and bonding can really do for a child's development.
You are incredible. I'm sitting here doing these vast notes to myself as you give me all these fantastic. Could you sense me fist pumping in the air? I was so excited at everything you were saying. You know what it is? I'm old school. I mean, I'm 46 years old, and I was raised exactly as you described. Mom was working her backside off, but she was home. She was a visual the whole time, and Dad was off doing his thing and working like a madman too. But we had exactly that setup. And here in this day and age, you know, I graduated class of '86 from high school, right in that moment. Supposed to be, you know, forget the house and family, just go out and make a huge career for yourself, and that'll make up for it. It was very tearing, you know, for a lot of people in my generation who were convinced that no matter what we were doing, we should have been doing something else. So I'm home with kids now, and I'm so blessed with them, and I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm working from home, and they have the, air quotes, lucky experience of being home with mom their entire lives, but it's been so rewarding for me. I just know I could not have gone out and where so many other moms have gone out there and done what would have been so tough for me to go out and get that. They got it done. They stayed outside the home and made remarkable careers for themselves. I'm doing the same thing at home, but it's exactly as you described, Doctor. It's a tough thing to do. It's a nearly impossible balance. This is why you're so high in demand. Everything you're saying, I'm deadly serious, because you've got a lot of people out there that are saying, well, don't do this. Go against your instincts and do this instead. And people actually did it. And the stress that results from it, no one's a winner from that one, and not even their bank account's a winner when all is said and done. So you're coming back with this such helpful, needed advice. Why aren't more people hearing about this? Why do we still have the people out there that are saying, no, fight that maternal instinct, go out there, spend an entire day away from their kids, and don't forget to strap them to their chairs and make them do all their homework in 3 hours and really not let them get up, because then they'll be successful adults too. There is so much of that crap going on out there, Doctor. You must see it all the time. What do you do?
Well, you're exactly right. You are so smart, and you give your kids the greatest gift anyone could ever give them, bonding, because mom is the touchstone. You know, when a child starts to learn, it extends out. And the next day when it starts to learn, even crawling on the floor, it extends out beyond itself, beyond where it went the day before. But that extension always has their eye, one eye over their shoulder, looking back to see if mom is in the room, if mom's in the house, within crying distance, so that when we need her, we can get her. Children need their mothers, and you know, biology and nature conspires to have mom there. You said it, the maternal instinct. All of our hormones start pumping up. Breast milk comes to our bodies, and we're really organized by the estrogen that we've produced to soften, to be willing to stay home, to sacrifice for the next generation. But our culture has pushed us beyond that. Not in other countries. You know that our culture, children have problems with mothers have problems with children who cry. In India, in China, in Africa, they don't have trouble with children crying because children go along with mom. So at the end of the day, what we know is that today, as children get older, mothers, not all mothers want to be with their children. They want it all. They want the job, they want the career, they want the big life, and they want to have children. And children suffer. When a child walks into a school with a gun and starts shooting, and we blame it on the gun as a symptom of the problem, but we don't see that in our culture we're not giving children what they need in the beginning so that they use their executive function, so that they think critically, so that they don't move emotionally and reactively from that other important part of the brain, that amygdala, where flight or fight live, and that part gets larger in our brain when we are stressed.
Hey, and doctor, hang on one second. I want so much to get to all of this. My producer has got that look on his face where we've got to cut to a break. I'm so sorry. Hang out with us for just a minute because we want to get the rest of this. Don't go away. We'll be right back right after this. Doctor, my apologies. Hang on. Stand by.
We're good.
Cool. And we are back with the Kristen Hagopian Show. Before the break, I'm so sorry to have had to cut you out there because I really wanted to get all this in here. You were bringing up such an important point with the ripple effects of this crazy lifestyle that we have imposed on ourselves in a lot of the Western world. And you were making such an important point about the physical aspects of this and brain development. Please continue with that. I really want to hear about that.
Well, typically we think, all of us think from the executive function, what we call the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain that makes us different from all other primates. That's what makes us human. That's where we think rationally from. And in that prefrontal cortex is our impulse control. And when a baby is detached too quickly from their mother, what happens? They overproduce cortisol, the stress hormone. When we go to a nursery and we take a little Q-tip, we can measure the elevation of cortisol in a baby's saliva hour by hour by hour in relation to their separation from mom. And ultimately, they get used to the nursery environment, and they calm down, they stop crying, and we think we've created a good habit in them. But actually, they have given up, and we have helped them change their brain architecture, in some cases forevermore. And it's all from that cortisol stress hormone bathing the brain when they were frightened. If I say to you, if you park your car here, somebody will grab your baby and run, you immediately feel so frightened and you understand that terror of being separated from your baby. Well, that's how your baby feels when they are put in a nursery environment or with a babysitter or with a nanny in the early stages, because they have no sense of time. They have no sense of your returning. They feel completely abandoned and detached. And their one most important part of themselves, as they believe, is gone. So they're in terror, and the brain reflects that. The other part of the brain, where our emotion lives, the place where flight or fight is, and that's the primitive part of our brain, but that's how we primitively deal with stress to this day, that part of the brain gets larger. So typically the prefrontal cortex is the captain of our ship. But when we're under stress, when you're under stress, if you don't get a good night's sleep tonight, your amygdala will get larger, and it will take over being captain of the ship. And so you'll be reactive, cranky, thinking more emotionally. Well, same thing with your children. And so if we set up this situation, for example, poverty can set up that situation, bullying can set up that situation, over-pressuring our children sexually, all the toys that our kids are exposed to, the violent media, the violent games that they play, all of these things are affecting the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and this other piece of the brain called the hippocampus, where we learn from and our memory is. And we can see how that's supposed to develop. And when a child is stressed consistently, or an adult is consistently, has been stressed as a child, we can look at that hippocampus and see where it's narrower than it should be at a particular stage of development. Now, we don't know what happened there, but what we do know is something happened there. And children that are separated too early, that have detachment issues from their parents, failure to thrive, these children may not show stress at first, but around the 5th grade, when they start thinking critically, that's when they start falling down, when they can't think abstractly, they have problems with math and problem solving. And at midlife, at around 40, women in particular will have this free-floating anxiety, and they'll think, gosh, I wonder where that's coming from. And where it's coming from is their early childhood development and the stress they experienced many times in detaching too early. Our culture in the West has made us feel that we can have it all. And actually, we can't. And we have to figure out how to compensate for the time we spend away from our children. We can't just be gone all day and gone all night and then go away on the weekends. We've become a very immature society. Parents have to parent. You will be a parent till the day your children die. Your children will grow up, but you will always be a parent, and you will be entitled to parent. This requires a certain knowledge of how the brain develops that we never understood before. Now we can see it. We can see it on technology. This technology helps us now actually visualize what's happening to the brain when it's stressed and it's in early development. You know, we're the only species that's born underdeveloped. Other primates can get up and find food for themselves, and little deer can rise up at birth and walk around. A little colt can get up and walk around. A little tiger, a little lion. Not a human. A human is in need of everything, of food, of comfort, of protection. They can't see that well. Every sense is really needs to be supported by their primary caretaker. And that, by the time your child is 5 years old, half of that job is done. Half of the brain is developed. But by the time your child is 10, 90% of it is over. And then the longest stretch, ironically, is between 10 and adolescence. And adolescents can move into the early 20s. So, that's why our teenagers are so danger-oriented. And we as parents clamp down at them in the teenage years because we remember our teenage years. But when children are still not impulse control finished, or they have a faulty impulse control from stress, alcohol, drugs, then they don't see danger in the same way they will later on in their 20s and early 30s, and they can be at great risk. So parenting is a big job, the most important job. And if children don't ask to be born, but if they are going to be born, we have to think not just of ourselves, not just of our future, but the future of our culture, of our society. And we have to figure out ways to compensate for the time we spend away from our children.
That is fascinating. You are literally revalidating stuff that you just don't hear anymore. A lot of us moms nowadays, whether it's by accident or design with this economy, we really feel more comfortable having one of us at home. A lot of times it's impossible to do otherwise due to the economy, but we're spinning back to a reality in which you don't have both parents out of the house anymore doing, both pursuing a career. Oftentimes, again, because of the economy, you've got one parent at home. And one of the things that I connect with most with parents, be it the dad that's home or the mom that's home, is that if there's any silver lining to this crummy economy, it's that it's giving them a chance to stay home with these school-age kids, and they are seeing exactly what you're talking about when it comes to an increased reassurance. They didn't want the trip to Disney. They wanted mom and dad there when they got home from school, or they wanted them there, at lunchtime when they're having a peanut butter and jelly over Sesame Street. And they're finding time and again it is precisely what you said. How do we get the word out about this more? We've got about 30 seconds before the break.
Well, there was a very big study in the Clinton administration on child care and child development, and whether the child was a teenage juvenile delinquent or a model student, the one survey question they had in common was they all wanted more time with their mom and dad.
There you go. That's it. Dr. Gail Gross. You can find her at drgailgross.com. I wish we had an hour and a half. Please join us again soon sometime.
I'll so look forward to it. You are terrific, Kristen, and you are really doing a wonderful parenting job. I will add one thing for you privately. Remember to talk to your children in a complicated way. That's how they build that associative mass. That's how they raise IQ. The two influences on IQ, and also Baroque music in the Largo movement, which is syncopated to your heartbeat, 60 beats per minute, and it will throw more blood to the prefrontal cortex, put your child in a perfect, relaxed, potential learning state where they can really reach their fullest capacity.
Outstanding. Dr. Gross, thank you again so much. I appreciate it. I really look forward to having you on again sometime soon.
Me too, Kristen. I loved it. You're terrific and very savvy mother.
Oh, bless you.
You have two lucky children.
Dr. Gail Gross thinks my kids are lucky. Kids, I'm going to put them in front of them. I'm going to have them listen to this when it comes out. Thank you again so much, gang. Until next week, save those pennies, pay with cash, and you all stay frugal out there.